Do we have to keep saying who it's starring when it's the same people all the time? I think we got used to that from Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Everything's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy.
Deja vu.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Deja Reviewed podcast, where we talk about the original versions of TV shows and movies that were later rebooted. In Season 2, we're discussing the first and only season of the original Battlestar Galactica. I'm Michael.
And I'm Mark.
And today, we're discussing Episode 5, Lost Planet of the Gods Part 2. And Lost Planet of the Gods Part 2 originally aired on October 1st, 1978. It was directed by Christian I. Nyby II, written by Glenn A. Larson, and starring Richard Hatch, Dirk Benedict, and Lorne Greene.
I like the way you haven't gone overboard on furniture. Thanks.
It will go better for you, Lieutenant, if you show a little respect.
You mean things could get worse?
Baltar, I'd trade my life for one shot at you.
You'll feel differently when you come to understand that I had nothing to do with the defeat of the colonies. I, too, was a victim.
Yeah, you look like one.
Fortunately, there have been some changes in the Cylon Empire. Changes favorable to humans. Remove him.
This is your plan? To convince the humans that we come bearing the twig of peace? It is illogical to assume they would ever trust you again.
You underestimate the human need for hope.
And the description of Lost Planet of the Gods Part 2 from IMDb is, after traversing a large void in space, the Galactica and the refugee fleet discover the home planet of their species, Kobol. Kobol? I guess.
Kobol? I don't know.
It's Kobol. They say, I think it's Kobol.
Also, I watched this episode like a week ago, and I'm glad you gave the summary, because I was like, what happened in this episode again? That was a pretty good summary, though. Like, the key plot point was they find their way back to Kobol, which they think will have directions back to Earth, which is the planet they're looking for.
Also, I don't know that I ever realized this. These are not humans. They are Kobolians, the home planet of their species. I guess they could be saying that they're human.
I think the opening voiceover implies that humans are Kobolians. Like, all of us originally came from Kobol. Kobol? Now I'm...
Kobol. Lords of Kobol is how they say it.
Okay.
Lords of Kobol. Although I would have spelled it Kobal. Is this interesting? Is any of this interesting?
The show or our show or what?
Any of it. Just any of it.
I don't know. Last episode, we talked about that the beginning started with like flashes of the episode, and both you and I were like, wait, did I miss something?
I'm so
and
glad
this
you said
one
that.
starts with the same structure, but this time it is a previously on. So I'm very confused about what they're doing here. Because I was
I'm so glad you said that.
I did see this stuff, but I thought we were seeing floors. I was like so bewildered.
I'm so glad you said that, because my very first note is, did they just jump right into the previously on with no warning? That was wild. And it was like, the previously on was like snippets. It was really coming at you pretty quickly.
No, it did not like, they didn't like build a story like previously on, here's going to be the important part. It's like previously on, and like they just took a random number generator and grabbed random scenes out of the previous episode and played them. But you're right, they didn't even say previously on. It just like jumps right in showing like random snippets of stuff we've seen before, which was exactly the way they started the last episode, was jump right in with random snippets, except it was stuff we hadn't seen before. So I'm like, are these editors drunk? Did the guy last time think he was doing the next time on and accidentally got edited into the previously on or something? I'm so confused.
It was very strange. It was very abrupt. And in talking about the opening, I guess we're back to super long openings, because I was about 4:10 into this episode before there was any new content.
And I've just given up keeping track, because at this point I'm assuming like I wait till the opening credits come on and then I just like go write an email or something, because it'll still be going when I come back. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at my notes before we move on from the previously on. I'm an editor, so I'm always looking for how things are pieced together. And the big thing is, how do you tell a story in a narrative? Let's be clear, this is a very hard thing to do well. That said, it's also very hard to do this badly. This is probably the worst cut together previously on I've ever seen. Like, there are bits of several important elements or plot points from the series thus far, but there's no logic to how they're put together. There's no structure to it. There's no build that like one thing follows from the other. It's literally like, hey, think of 10 things that have happened so far in Battlestar Galactica. Let's grab 2 lines about each one and throw them in here, whether or not they relate to what's coming in this episode and whether or not they relate to each other. It was so bad. I mean, honestly, this is reminding me of weird tangent, but there's this great piece that 538 did a few years ago about the Cleveland Browns, and basically given all the high draft picks they've had and all the resources that they've been put into draft capital players, which is usually how your team gets better, it's extremely statistically unlikely that they could be as bad as they are. Like, basically they said, if you started out when the Browns came back as an expansion team and tried to do this badly, you probably couldn't. Statistically, you would accidentally occasionally do the right thing. And I say this in a year that the Browns just made it to the second round of the playoffs, which is great. We have a lot of family from Cleveland, and I'm very happy for them and stuff. But it was really kind of funny reading that, like, even if you tried to be this terrible, you can't. And that was, this previously on was bordering on that. Like, if I tried to cut together the most nonsensical previously on, I could probably do worse than this, but it would be an effort.
You would have to take clips from an entirely different show.
Well, maybe they should have just cut in some clips from Star Wars, and that probably would have been more interesting and attracted more of an audience.
While we're talking about the opening credits,
For the first half hour of the podcast, every time.
I saw the name Donald P. Belisario creep up through the credits, and I'm going to quiz you, Mark. Do you recognize that name at all?
I do not. I didn't read it in the credits. I don't recognize it now. I've never heard that name before.
Because it triggered something in the back of my head, and I'm like, I know that name. So I looked him up. He's written a bunch of stuff. He wrote for Airwolf. He wrote for both the old Magnum PI and the new Magnum PI. He wrote for JAG. He wrote for NCIS. But what I did recognize him from is one of my favorite childhood shows and one of my favorite sci-fi shows of all time, Quantum Leap. He created Quantum Leap.
Oh.
And I remember seeing his name a million times in Quantum Leap. I don't know if they're actually going to reboot it officially or if he's part of that, but he was definitely the creator of the original Quantum Leap, which is legitimately one of my favorite shows ever.
I didn't watch that religiously, but I liked it when I saw it. And that's kind of cool. One of the things I do like about watching old television, and you see it even sometimes if we're watching like reruns of sitcoms from the 80s or 90s, and you look further down the credits and you see people who are like staff writers or an assistant or something who went on to do big things. And I always find that kind of cool.
Yeah. So he was a writer on Battlestar Galactica. So not creator, none of that stuff, but had written several episodes for them.
No, that's still, look, that's a great credit to have under your
100%.
Under your belt.
It was super cool.
Can I tell you a fun Quantum Leap story?
Of course.
From when I was jumping into people's bot. No. When I was at Northwestern, something you would have appreciated, they had a sketch comedy group that now it was based out of the radio TV film department. So they did more SNL style. Like, it wasn't live, but they would like write sketches. They would film them, edit them together, and then they would like broadcast the show.
Do you remember the name? Because one of my good friends, I'm sure, was part of it.
NSTV.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it stood for Northwestern Sketch Television or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was not involved with it. This was an undergrad thing, and I was there as a grad student, but saw several of them. And there's one that has always just stuck in my head because I thought it was so funny and just so brilliant, and like it was like Robot Chicken-esque, like a 5-second thing. And it was just using footage from Quantum Leap. It's like titles, and it's like Scott Bakula is Bakula as Dracula in Bakula. And that was just titles against black. And then it just shows a shot from Quantum Leap of Scott Bakula like looking in a mirror, and they've taken out the reflection so there's nobody there, and that's the entire sketch. I loved it.
I don't know if you've told that on the podcast before, but you've definitely told me that story
I
before.
probably have. I really love that one. I actually went and found it like a year ago and watched, like I found an old clip I had of it and watched it again.
All right, so let's get to this.
Okay,
so
wait. Before we move on from the opening credits, I have one note. But I noted this while we were in the opening credits that Jane Seymour was listed in her 5th episode as a guest star, and I'm like, how long do you have to be in the series to still be a guest star in that? And I'm like, she's got to be dying soon.
More than one episode,
So-
or more than 5 episodes, obviously.
Yeah,
And
just
we'll
thought
talk
was
about that
interesting.
later.
It was kind of a giveaway, though, that something was going to happen to her, because you don't have like the character who's about to marry one of your leads, and then they're just like suddenly still there, but they're not in the show anymore. So the fact that she had been credited as a guest star kind of tells you from the beginning her character was not long for this world. And I thought it was a little bit of a missed opportunity. I'm thinking of terrible movie, but the Executive Decision long ago with Kurt Russell and Steven Seagal. And all it was a really smart campaign. All the advertising was like Kurt Russell and Steven Seagal. It was like these two stars. And Steven Seagal gets killed in like the first 30 seconds of the movie. Maybe not 30, but like the first 5 minutes of the movie. And it's basically a Kurt Russell movie. But it really shocked you because there was no giveaway. Like, you really thought he was one of the leads. And the fact that they kept crediting her as guest star, even noted here, like, surely she's going to like die or something, because they can't keep crediting her a guest star when she's been in this many episodes.
She did die, and Don't Call Me Shirley. To a lesser extent, Scream did the same thing with Drew Barrymore, the first Scream. Because Drew Barrymore died. I remember the hype being that Drew Barrymore was in this horror movie, and she was gone within the first 10 minutes of that movie, too.
And that became part of their shtick, didn't it? Like all the subsequent Screams, like they would get some bigger star to be in the first scene and get killed off, and that was like part of the franchise then.
Oh, I don't know. I guess I didn't really remember.
The first one's the only one that was like worth watching again, but I seem to recall the next couple did the same thing.
I don't think 2 was bad. I think they just kind of given up the ghost. They were sort of a one-trick pony with the Revelation. Why are we talking about Scream? Let's get back to this episode. I'm going to keep us on track.
Because the original Scream was better than this episode?
Yes. No. Okay. We'll get to that.
All right.
So as we launch into this episode, I was kind of laughing, and I have a note. I'm like, because Apollo and Starbuck are talking about where Apollo's going to live after he marries Serena, Jane Seymour's character that we were just talking about. And Apollo's like, oh, I found this great place on like Quasar 9 or whatever. And they're having this like kind of like very funny, just casual conversation. And I have this note. I'm like, when does Apollo have time for house hunting? And I was going to drag that scene a little bit. But then I realized what they were doing, and I kind of liked it, because they were sitting in the pilot's room with all these female pilots who have taken over for the guy pilots that are all sick from the virus that hit them in part 1 of this episode. And they're doing the girl talk, and gender relations aside, it was really kind of cute. It was kind of a fun little thing, as all the girls were talking about, or all the women were talking about, oh, and then there was a Cylon on my tail, and I blasted him out of the sky, and it was really kind of a neat gender swap of those 2 roles that I actually really liked.
No, I thought it was fun, and the gender stereotypes there are dated, but honestly, I think I've seen, not talking about the Cylons, but the same sort of like, look, the joke is we reverse the genders like into the 90s and 2000s. Like Friends did that all the time. So it's hard to bash them too much for that. Yeah, and I thought that was clever. And it wasn't just the house hunting. Then like the Starbucks, like, so how are you going to decorate? Like they really... they really played it up there. Was funny. The thing I wasn't sure about, because it was interesting, they kind of played it down the middle, and I kind of liked that it was ambiguous, was I wasn't 100% sure whether Starbuck and Apollo were supposed to be intentionally doing that to like make fun of the position they found themselves in, or if the show was doing it and they were having a legitimate conversation and the female pilots were, and the show was kind of like, look, we did this gender reveal thing. What was your take on that?
I have thoughts on that. I think it would be a lot clearer if the acting wasn't so bad in the show, because honestly, initially I thought, oh my God, this acting is absolutely atrocious. But then I think it was actually Richard Hatch overacting, like, oh, look at me, I'm looking for houses and decorating houses. I think that it was actually Starbuck and Apollo were hamming up the fact that they were playing kind of the housemaker role.
Okay, I'm willing to buy that. I will say particularly Richard Hatch's acting is so over the top anyway. It was like, I couldn't tell if he was being over the top to like, look how silly we're being, or if it was just him. Since you brought it up, I have 2 notes on this scene. And one says, interesting gender play in the post-battle Viper pilot party. Second one, Richard Hatch's acting is ridiculously over the top. I thought his eyes were going to roll right out of my screen.
Okay,
So,
I will
fair
give Richard
enough.
Hatch. I will give Richard Hatch some credit though, and this is my first. Oh, we're ripping off Star Wars moment. Richard Hatch is really starting to get the Harrison Ford point down, because after this scene when they're all Richard Hatch, well, Apollo and Starbuck are basically being like, "Oh, we've been supplanted by the female pilots." They get called on a mission, and apparently Serena is now Apollo's wingman instead of Starbuck, which I thought was kind of weird. But Starbuck is like, okay, I'm going to go to the mess hall or something. And he goes the opposite direction, or he's going to the hangar, which I'll talk about that moment in a second. And Apollo points after him. He's like, well, he shouldn't have gone that way. He should have gone that way. And he's definitely got the Harrison Ford Han Solo point down with the two fingers. And he's like doing he's getting more Harrison Ford-esque, I feel like, as he's developing this character.
Do
Although
you think
Starbuck's
he just goes
supposed to be
back
good.
at home at night and like watches? Well, I guess they didn't have bootleg tapes at that point, but like, goes down to the local theater and watches another screening of Star Wars and like practices his manners.
Probably in the mirror.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the terrible moment in the special edition where they re-edited Jabba the Hutt into the first scene where Han goes back, but like,
And he's jabbing him
and
in
he's
the
doing
chest.
like pointing, but he couldn't point where he should be because now there's a giant body there that wasn't there when they shot it.
Yeah, they have him like jab him in the chest. Well, and Harrison Ford pointing is a classic meme. There's "You find this man" from The Fugitive when he's pointing at the detectives that are interrogating him. And I know that Starbuck was really supposed to probably be more of the Han Solo character, but let's be honest, they're trying to look and act like Han Solo.
Well, you can't go wrong with two Han Solos. Yeah, that moment you noted too, where Starbuck takes off, and let's get to the hangar scene in there.
Yeah.
But this will be another place I'll give the show some credit. Starbuck seemed like he was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll just hang here and you guys go off on your mission. And I was like, in the middle of writing, this is a different Starbuck. So I'm thinking of like the Katie Sackhoff Starbuck would have been like, screw you guys. I'm going and doing it. And then he does exactly that.
Yep.
He just pretended to be happy about it. So I was like, touche myself. They got that character.
I'm glad you said that. I'm a huge sucker for moments like this. One of my favorite scenes in Tombstone is when Doc Holliday shows up to fight Curly Bill in lieu of Wyatt Earp, and he's like, I'm your Huckleberry, because he gets out of bed and beats Wyatt Earp to the punch because he knows Wyatt Earp is going to lose to Curly Bill. Mm-hmm. And I am a huge sucker for scenes like that when they do the noble thing almost like in a jerky way. And I completely agree with you. I love it. It was perfectly in character for Starbuck, and that releases endorphins in my brain.
And that's a great point that he's doing the noble thing, but in a jerky sort of way. Can we also say they probably need some more military rigor and discipline on the Galactica? First off, Apollo and Starbuck don't even know that the assignments have changed. Like, what? Serena's my wingman out? She's like, yeah, the commander posted the list. He's like, I didn't check the list. And then Starbuck just goes and takes off. And they're like, was he supposed to take off? I don't know. Oh, now there's two more ships. And like, nobody's stopping them or checking on this. I don't think that's how a battleship is supposed to work.
I'm going to jump ahead in my notes because later on I have a note that says, I don't understand the chain of command. Serena at one point seems like she's above Apollo, and then Starbuck is under Apollo. I completely agree. I do not understand the chain of command on Battlestar because at one point Serena gives Apollo grief. She's like, oh, you can't talk to an officer that way. And then we'll get to this, but when they refine Starbuck, he's like, oh, you be careful. You can't hug a subordinate officer. I'm like, wait a minute. What?
She's been a pilot for a week. How is she?
Yes. And how is she above Apollo too? It was very, very
well,
strange.
I'm also not sure because, so remember in the last episode, we had the weird thing where there was like this other security force that was like giving the pilots the 9th degree for taking their... And I'm like, and we didn't know how those people fit in. And then now, like, apparently Commander Adama, in addition to being like one of the 12, like, guiding people of their whole civilization, is also the one like making the pilot duty roster. Like, but not telling Apollo, his lead pilot, and he doesn't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, what the hell is Ty doing? Like, Ty, we only see Ty, who I think is actually being a wasted character to this point. I hope we get more of Colonel Ty.
I think so too. I like him. And before you leave Ty, there's a moment right in the beginning where he's like looking at something on the scanner. He's like, God, I keep seeing this blip.
Yeah.
And that was cool. I didn't like that then the blip kept showing up. I almost wanted it to be like he was confident he saw something no one else did. But it reminded me of the great scene in The Hunt for Red October where they're like on the sonar And there's like the one really like the sonar guy with like the really good ears. He's like the best sonar, and like he's the one who distinguishes this slight little change and is able to hear the silent caterpillar drive. And he's like the only one in the Navy who can find this ship now. It reminded me of that. Then they like show the screen like blip, yep, there it is. And I'm like, oh, that could have been a moment where, you know, I thought there could have been a nice scene with Adama and Ty or something where like Adama shows he trusts Ty by taking it seriously even though nobody saw it or something.
To be fair to him at that point, or to be fair to the writers, they could have written it a different way, but they had already introduced that two people had already seen it before and they were kind of calling Ty's attention to it. And that blip was just the Cylons. I might have missed
that part. That might have been during a commercial break for me or something.
Yeah, true. The Cylons, just so you guys know what that blip is, the Cylons are trying to they're trying to kidnap someone, basically, which actually, now that I'm saying that, I'm not 100% sure why, but we'll get to that. But so the Cylons were kind of just outside of their radar, kind of following the Battlestar.
Okay, so last time I cleared up a plot question for you. You have to clear one up for me here.
I might be able to help.
I am super confused about when Apollo and Starbuck went into the black void. None of their sensors worked or anything. Like Starbuck had to follow his nose to get them back out or whatever. Now they're in the black void, but like they can see something on their scanner, but also the Cylons are still outside the void. And then when Starbuck and several people now like go out on this mission, they just like fly right out of the void to the Cylons like and see the Cylons like out there. I'm so confused about what the hell is going on with this void. Like, wait, if they can just like, they know the edge of the void is like 3 inches away, why don't they just fly 3 inches over to the left and not be in? I was super lost about all that.
I'm going to raise you one I can't answer that question and ask if I completely missed that the Battlestar went into the void. I thought that they were just sending out parties into the void. I missed that the Battlestar went into the void at any point, and clearly they were, because there's a scene at the end when they see a star and they're like, we're out of the void. I'm like, when did you go in the void? I feel like that should have been a bigger deal, because
I think we didn't see them go in the void. This is another one where like there's stuff that happens between the episodes that is important that they just don't tell us. I think at the end of last episode it was implied that's where they were going to go.
But there was no between episodes. This was one long movie. This was like a two-parter. Was it actually implied that they were going to go into the void at the end of last episode? Then I missed that.
It was implied. So my assumption was they were in the void. But then when they were seeing stuff on the scanner, I'm like, maybe they didn't go into the void. But then they are in the void. But also they can easily get in and out of the void because they like go out, see the Cylons, and come back and find their way right back to the Galactica. I'm so confused.
And they didn't forget about this mechanic, because at one point, Serena and Starbuck and Apollo, when they're out on patrol, are like, why don't we link our ships basically so we can find our way, not physically link them, but link
like
our
a breadcrumb trail of ships.
Exactly. So we can find our way back to Galactica. But if Galactica's in the void too, it was very confusing. So I can't answer that question. Sorry.
I can't answer your question either. This is one that bugs me though, because they spent a lot of work setting up explicitly that you can't find your way in the void and then throw that out. If this was something where like the void was a minor player and like one time we're like, it seemed like they get lost in there, but then they found their way easier. Like, okay, maybe the writers didn't really care much about it. Most of last episode was about not being able to find your way in this void. And then they completely abandoned that mechanic in what you said is part 2 of the same episode with the same writers and same director and continuing the storyline. Between editing episode 1 and editing episode 2, they forgot what their rules were.
So if you guys are going to complain along with us about breaking established rules in sci-fi shows or media, can we talk about The Last Jedi? I'm just kidding. I don't want to get on it, but that's why I hated that movie so much. For many reasons, but also that one.
I was under the impression you loved The Last Jedi from all your prior comments, Mike.
You know what? Let's argue that out over a break. We'll take a quick break. I'll explain for 45 minutes to an hour why I hate The Last Jedi, and we'll be back right after the break.
What is it? It's a star. What is it, Colonel Ty? Where are we? Into the void? What is it?
It's hard to believe.
Believe it. Believe it.
It's the end of the void. Initiate a search for a planet. Elliptical orbit.
1 to 3 parsecs from the star. A planet. If I'm right, the planet Kobol.
Okay, we're back, and I finally convinced Mark why The Last Jedi was atrocious.
It's been 3 hours on break.
So Starbuck gets captured by this Cylon when they're out on patrol with Apollo, Serena, and Starbuck. Starbuck gets captured by the Cylons, and it's the weirdest capture of all time because the Cylons, it wasn't like a tractor beam or anything. They just sort of led him back to the base star, right?
And they didn't have him like dramatically outnumbered, and he was right outside the void, so he could have just flown back in the void and lost him. He's like, oh, there's a couple of Cylon ships. I guess I'll follow him back to the base star.
Yeah, it was very weird. So Starbuck gets brought before the Imperious guy.
Gaius Baltar.
I'm kind of liking... I don't think he saw Gaius yet, did he? Oh, no, yeah, he did, because he's like, you traitor.
Yeah, because Lucifer, the robot, brings him.
That's right.
Yeah.
So... But I like that Starbuck's starting to develop a little bit of character because he's like, I like the way you haven't gone overboard on furniture in this room that's just that we've commented on is just this pedestal in the middle of this blank room. I like that Starbuck's starting to develop, that Dirk Benedict's starting to develop some character for Starbuck.
Yeah, and I think they're starting to, and I know we've already talked about some Star Wars ripoffs, and there I think will be some more in this episode, but it feels like they're finding a little bit of their voice. And I was thinking of what Derek said about this ultimately being like pitched at kids. I noticed two things with that. One is that the characters aren't taking things super seriously, and I thought that Starbuck was a good example of that. Like, most of the time you don't feel a huge sense of danger or threat. It's more like, oh, what's going to happen now? And I think that's been, we're 5 episodes in, pushing that way, like take the stakes a little lower, a little more fun, Flash Gordon-y. Whereas Star Wars obviously, is fun. There's humor to it, but there's also like very high stakes and a very evil empire that they're fighting against.
And in the reboot, same thing. Very high stakes, very evil Cylons.
Yeah, so this is a little different there. And the other thing that made me think about what Derek had said about the pitching at kids is they're really... even though they're doing a bad job laying out some of the plot points and following plot point to plot point, because then we get totally confused about things, they really explicitly spell out some of the plot points and conflicts and like, let's make sure all the kids in the back got it. Okay, we're going to do this.
Okay, that's a perfect segue into my next point though, Mark. So at first we were laughing last episode about how Gaius Baltar was just so comically evil. And I thought that was such a disservice to what I know the character as with James Callis's portrayal of him in the reboot. But now I'm actually happy that they seem to give Gaius a little bit more depth in this one, because at first I was like, does he just think that humanity's better off under the Cylons, so he's trying to bait them in to enslave them? I didn't get it. That seemed pure evil anyhow. Then I was like, wait, is he just trying to bring the Galactica to Imperius to like impress him? Because he like later says he's the only one who can bring in the Galactica. But now I don't really know if he's, and especially in the later scene in the Indiana Jones
we'll say in the Well of Souls.
Yeah, in the Well of the Souls. But which hadn't come out yet though, technically.
No, this is another case like we talked about in Empire, where I think Lucas is stealing back from Battlestar. Like, all right, you're going to rip me off. I'm going to take anything cool you did. Because they had the same exact scene where they're like, in the well, like, hold up my crystal, the light shines through to something and makes the magic happen.
100%. I had the same note that we've got some real Indiana Jones stuff happening in that scene, to the point where they actually had like high-tech torches. They were walking around essentially with torches that were basically just light bulbs at the end of sticks, which was kind of interesting. But I think that this episode actually gave Baltar some depth. Like, I wasn't sure what his motivations were, if he was just going to continue being comically evil. But now he's starting to get more and more like the James Callis version of Baltar, where it's like, is he just playing one side? Which side is he actually on? I thought they did a much better job of muddying the water about Baltar's motivation.
I'm going to half 100% agree with you and half completely disagree with you. I don't know how those numbers add up, but I'm with you on muddying the waters, and we're not really sure what his motivation and what he's doing. I think you're bringing a lot of your understanding of Gaius from the reboot
maybe
into this and projecting like this complex scenario. This read to me as something like the writers themselves weren't even sure, like, is he on their side? Is he on the other side? One thing we talked about last episode is the reboot Gaius, like, has a very clear directive. It's like self-preservation, do what is good for Gaius. And that was a goal, and you could sort of understand that driving things. I got no sense here of that he's trying to do what's good for him or what's good for the Cylons or what's good for the humans. It felt like he was kind of acting randomly and sometimes pursuing one agenda and sometimes another. So I agree with you on muddying the waters. My own feeling was I didn't get complexity and depth. I got confusion of the writers. And maybe my projection here was I was reminded of something I directed a long time ago off a script that wasn't honestly very good. And one of the characters just like, they did things because the script needed them to do things, but it didn't, like, their motivations were not coherent or consistent from scene to scene. We were trying to make it work. And I remember at one point, the actress playing this character was like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm like, I don't either. You're doing it because the script says it needs to happen and we need it to get to this next plot point. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And that's bad, that's bad directing by me, first off. But that's the feeling I had here, was that they're like, ooh, let's raise this sort of conflict and maybe Gaius is good and bad, but they didn't put in the work to figure that out. They're like, let's just have him doing contradictory things. So that was my take on it. I was not feeling the depth. I was just feeling confusion.
Okay. But I don't know how you were going to create depth without initially creating that confusion. Because I know you want to talk about the marriage first, so let's keep this in chronological order. But when we get to the Well of the Souls, we can talk a little bit more about him there. Do you want to jump to the marriage?
Yes, let's talk about the marriage. First off, Starbuck just got kidnapped. And instead of sending out a search party or trying to do anything for him, they're like, let's get everyone on Galactica together to do a wedding, which is somewhere where somehow there's like an open roof, even though they're on the spaceship, because they see the star come out and they all like look up at the sky and like, look, it's the star. We found Kobol. I'm so confused about where they are. I hope Starbuck doesn't find out that this is, as soon as they found out he was gone, that this is how much they cared about him. They're like, let's have a big celebration. Starbuck got kidnapped.
Hang on. Two things. I have a lot of stuff about this marriage thing. So one, they think he's dead. And here's another directly lifted from Star Wars moment where Apollo goes, I can't believe he's gone. Just like Luke, when Leia comes on the Millennium Falcon and puts the cloak on him after he's seen Obi-Wan Kenobi cut down by Darth Vader and they're escaping the Death Star. And he's sitting there like picking at the chessboard and he's like, I can't believe he's gone. It's the exact same line said with the exact same inflection. It is basically that moment. So I think that they think that Starbuck is dead. And then I will directly speak to this because I have some very, very personal experience of getting married in a crisis. So this hits very close home to me. So the idea was
Were
Serena,
you in fact in a black void when you guys got married on the ship of a Battlestar?
Yes. So Serena and Apollo, Serena's basically like, marry me now. Let's get married now. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. And I was engaged to be married in November of last year. The pandemic hit, we pushed the wedding back, but I told my now wife, so it all worked out, guys. I told Kelsey, I was like, hey, we should, just in case something happens to me or something happens to you, we should do the legal part of it and get married now. So we did. Once the courthouses opened again, we actually had a really nice, amazing little ceremony and did do the marriage part. Because we're like, hey, if you get COVID and you're in the hospital, there's absolutely no way they're letting me in as your fiance or your boyfriend. There might be a chance that I can get in as your husband or vice versa. And if something happens to me, if I pass away, like, I want you to be able to like pay the mortgage and keep the house and do the things and take care of the dogs, do the things like that. So I get this. This one hit a little bit close to home that they wanted to do this, especially after Starbuck, they thought died.
Okay, I'm going to say that I don't think what you just said and what I said actually have to be in conflict. I think it would have been cool if they had that scene, they do the like, let's get married, and they just go to Adama like, marry us now, feeling the urgency of life, and they have a little personal thing, and he looks out the window and sees the star. Great. This was not you and Kelsey like, we're in this crisis, we really want to get married. This was the full out ceremony. They have 800,000 candles, the entire everyone on the ship, like this is the giant like royal wedding ceremony. And that was what didn't ring true to me.
Okay, fair enough.
I buy the emotional reaction. And I actually thought I thought they did a bad job in this episode bouncing back and forth between like the emotion and the plot. Like it was like, here's our plot scene. Now we'll have an emotion scene. Now but they had some good emotional stuff in here, and I bought their reaction there. I didn't buy now we throw the giant, huge ceremonial wedding that didn't feel like it was about the two of them. It felt like it was about the whole ship and all the rigmarole. I did like that they had the kid give her away. I thought that was a nice little touch, that he doesn't know what he's supposed to do. They're like waiting for him to say something like, that's you. I thought that was cute. Generally, I haven't liked what they've done with the kid, but I thought that was a nice little bit.
I don't like that kid.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have anything else on the wedding, or can we get to Kobol?
Let's get to Kobol, because all sorts of stuff happens on Kobol, including all the Roman and Egyptian ruins there.
And matte paintings.
And some very bad matte paintings. Yes.
So right when they land on Kobol...
Matte painting technology apparently did not improve between the Twilight Zone and Battlestar, despite all the other advances in visual effects, as we've talked about here. And it's funny, it kind of seems like the thing you should be able to get right. Like, yes, we can do these ships flying through space and stuff, but what? A pyramid in the background? How on earth will we do that?
Yeah. So the idea of them going through the void was to get to Kobol, which is going to point them toward Earth, right? Which is their
Yes, they
planet.
thought they'd be able to find where the 13th group had left from.
Exactly, which is exactly. So they land on Kobol, there's matte paintings, and then immediately when they land, just like a truck drives by in the background. And I was like, what the hell? And like no one reacts at all. And then all the female pilots come up, and I'm like, did they drive up in that truck? I didn't get what was happening on Kobol. Do you think that was the female pilots that were driving in that truck?
I think that's what was supposed to be happening, but you're right. The way it's put together is very problematic, because they were even like, I got the feeling something's wrong here. Like, keep a lookout. Like, and somebody says the line, oh, it's a deserted planet, like supposedly deserted. And then they cut to the truck driving up, and you're like, oh, here's
Something's
the people
gonna
who live
happen.
here. And it's like, well, wait, why weren't Adama and Apollo and Serena on the same truck? Did they like...
Yes.
They got
And
out
why
and
didn't they
walked, and
react?
then the rest of the pilots took a van and somehow got... I don't know. Can I also say that when they got to Kobol, for being a supposedly ancient, abandoned planet that all the residents had left centuries or thousands of years ago, it's remarkably dust-free. Everything was clean and brand spanking new. And also, I like to pay some attention to the stylistic elements. For better or for worse, Galactica has had, and I've made fun of some of the things like where they're not aware of where cameras are, or where they have shots that don't make any sense why a camera would be there, but it has a sort of fairly straightforward visual aesthetic and a style to the shooting, and they stick relatively consistently to it. And then on Kobol, I think just because they were trying to show off some of the bits of set they have around, while they're walking through Kobol, they switch to this very loose, handheld, almost POV style of shooting that like stuck out at me like I'm watching a different show. And then after they've shown off their scenery, they completely abandon that again and go back to their normal shooting style. So I thought that was a weird choice that I understood why. It seemed like the kind of thing the director would be like, oh, we got all this cool design. What if we did a shot that's sort of handheld like this? And your cinematographer who's been working on the previous Battlestar Galactica episodes, it's their job to maintain a look, and says, no, that doesn't really fit our shooting style. Instead, they're like, sure, what the hell? Let's do whatever.
Fair enough.
That's what I got to say.
My beef with Kobol is my same beef with Star Wars, because this is clearly an allusion to Tatooine. I mean, this is basically a desert planet, I guess. I am so sick. I love The Mandalorian. I love season 1. I love season 2. Can we stop fucking starting every single Star Wars story on the most boring, visually uninteresting planet ever? They are obsessed with Tatooine, which also, that would be presumably one of the most difficult planets to live on, because you would think, hey, if we're going to struggle with not having water, at least nothing else can live here, so we can't get killed by a bunch of stuff. There's a ton of deadly stuff on Tatooine, and I really am so goddamn sick of seeing Tatooine in the Star Wars universe. This Kobol was clearly an allusion to Tatooine, though, to the point where they have pyramids. I mean, like, it was Egypt. It was very, very bizarre, and I just wish we would stop with Tatooine.
Okay, so 2 thoughts on that. One, I'm totally with you on Tatooine. The closest I've had, because I've tried to make a justification in my head, And I'm thinking of in Back to the Future where there's like a couple dates that just turn out to be pivotal. And Doc even comments like that must be some sort of time nexus. Like that date, everything centers around.
Yeah.
And maybe Tatooine is like the planetary equivalent of that. But I'm with you. Like, I don't think we need to keep going back there. And we just rewatched Rise of Skywalker, which I'd only seen when it came out in the theaters. So we watched it for a second time. And that ends back on Tatooine yet again.
I know. I'm just so sick.
The second thing is, I'm not sure how much this is for all the stuff they're ripping off of Star Wars. I don't think they're trying to rip off Tatooine here. I think on their back lot, they have an Egypt set and they're like, hey, how can we get some use? We need something that looks exotic, but like ancient humans to try to tie Earth to Kobol. Like, well, we got this sort of tomb Egypt set from the last Mummy movie we did. And they're like, sold, done.
You mentioned that on our first episode with Derek. That's for sure what was happening, I'm sure, there.
It's just a nice coincidence that it also harkens back to Tatooine.
So, and you are 100% right. I mean, the Indiana Jones vibes of when they go into the kind of Well of the Souls place are just abundant. And I thought it was interesting that Adama was such... I feel like this was kind of earned that Adama was so knowledgeable about this because we've seen him studying. It was kind of weird thinking of him as like a religious man because I never got that vibe from Edward James Olmos's portrayal of him.
That's a really good point. This is the same sort of thing we talked about in the pilot episode where they've had these few differences between the reboot and the original that turned out to be really crucial. If I had to sum up a theme of the reboot, and there's so many good themes and interesting things there, but you could do a lot worse than saying it's like faith versus rationality as a theme. Much like Lost, right?
Yeah.
But the smart thing they did there was they encapsulated those in two different people. So we talked about the civilian military dynamic, and I'm like gesturing with my hands here as though anyone other than you will ever see this, and that conflict there. And they had the same thing that Adama was like, I want to do what's rational, what we can understand with the data. And President Rosalind really believed in their faith and the religion, and that was a whole thread, was that conflict there. And the problem is they have both of those here, and they've just combined them into one person, so you don't get that conflict.
Good point. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Well, I was due for one after 5 episodes. Before we go further on the Indiana Jones thing, what this actually really reminded me of, and I guess it would be reversed because technically this came later and would have ripped it off. This is a deep cut. There was a MacGyver episode where they go to find the Holy Grail, and the place where they go to find it is almost exactly like this. It does not have hieroglyphs, like it's not Egyptian themed, but it's the same sort of thing. Like they need the torches to go down under. They set up some crystal and it shoots lines of lasers from one thing to another and sort of makes this pattern. And then, the door closes it. Like it's the same scene.
Huh.
And I always thought it was like, how close can we get to ripping off Indiana Jones without directly copying it? And I'm like, oh my God, MacGyver was ripping off Battlestar Galactica. It's this scene. So I don't know if the writers of that had seen this or maybe worked on this, who knows, but it's that's what I immediately called back to. And they even are aware they're ripping off Indiana Jones because the only lines I remember from that entire episode was when MacGyver's friend tells him, like, I got the clue, we're going to go find the Holy Grail. MacGyver's like, Indiana Jones already found it. I saw the movie. And that's their little meta joke.
Huh. Well, some other things about this little temple exchange. Adama very severely warns them to not shoot a blaster, which very much reminded me of the trash compactor scene when the whole thing's magnetically sealed. You can't shoot the blaster in there. When Baltar shows up because he's going to shoot him. But then a few beats later, there's Cylons just bombarding the planet's surface, and it doesn't bring the walls crashing in on him, which I thought was kind of
But things do start falling, and it was weird because, like, if I was them, they're like down underground in this tomb. I would have thought it was like a booby trap or something, and they immediately somehow know that the Cylons are attacking, and that's what's causing it. I'm like, the Cylons weren't there when you left. You're deep underground. How do you know the Cylons have launched a surprise attack? Yet another well-explained plot point in this episode.
Speaking of the Cylons, good for the second in command Cylon to have some career ambition,
right?
Because we get a little kind of neat little scene where he's like, "Hey, if I can lead this attack well, or if I can get the last humans," he's like, "Maybe I'll." I don't know why. He at one point basically says, the main leader is the same model as me. I don't know why they picked him instead of me to be the leader. He's like, maybe if I could show that I'm better than him. I thought that was kind of a neat little exchange too.
That was fun, and honestly a really good question. If these are like identical robots, why does that one get to be the leader?
Maybe they don't know when the current leader gets blasted. Maybe his memory gets wiped and he does just step into place of it. Maybe we'll find out.
I don't know. Yeah, no, that was a nice little bit. Although it's funny because in the same scene where we see that the guy's called Lucifer, that robot, that Cylon, we see him plotting and like trying to think how to take over from Gaius and like show his value and such. In that same scene, we see the Centurions like with absolutely zero initiative. They were like following Gaius, and then they see this guy say like, maybe I should be in charge. Like, what are your orders? Like,
yeah. So,
okay, they're good at, which let's give them credit. They're a lot better at following orders than Starbuck and the rest of the pilots are, since they can't even seem to get straight who's supposed to be flying the ships and not.
Very true. So as the Cylons are attacking on the outside, they scatter. And I think that's the point where Gaius just slips out. Oh, he goes into like a hole or something that opens up, right? Oh, that's what he did. Before they even started attacking, Gaius like slips into the hole that they opened up by using the crystal, right?
Right.
So they get out, and I'm going to give Battlestar Galactica, again, more credit than I was expecting for the effects, because I thought the effects on the Cylons actually attacking the planet were pretty darn good for a TV show in 1970s.
100% agreed on the quality of the effects. It reminded me, and this is like a plotting writing thing more than the quality of the effects, back to the first episode where their plan to like take out humanity was like fly a couple ships over cities and like shoot things. And apparently all the humans are like down here on the surface, like literally under cloth tents.
Yes.
And like the Cylons fly over and over them like 30 times shooting. And then they show, and there's like
one dog.
There's like 4 of the 8 tents are on fire, and the other ones are still fine. I'm like, they need some better shots in these,
like stormtroopers.
But yeah, the effects they were all good. The Cylons are the stormtrooper rejects. Like, if you can't make it as a stormtrooper, you get to be a Cylon. So while they're down there in the Well of Souls, I did think. So this is where we get the question of whether Baltar is really on their side or not. And you're right, there's some ambiguity. I think we had different interpretations of how we felt about that. But I did think it was weird that Adama doesn't seem convinced Baltar's on their side, but basically lays out his entire plan. Like,
True.
If you think Baltar might not be with you, maybe don't tell him every single step of everything you are doing from here, so when he goes back to the Cylons, he can just report it all.
True.
That seemed out of character for Adama, who generally has been, I won't say cautious, because he's taken some risks, taking them into the void, like following what he thinks the book is, but he seems pretty confident in his judgment, and whatever his judgment is, he seems to act on that. And this seemed weird that like he doesn't think Baltar is with them, but yet doesn't show the sort of restraint to not reveal their secret plan at that point.
That's a good point.
I was wrong about the tents. I looked closer at my notes. It was 6 tents and 3 of them were still standing, not 8 and 4.
Strong tents.
Just so we're clear. I have 2 things related to just things that seemed, I don't know, like they didn't make the right kind of deal of them, didn't make them a big deal or a little, I don't know. One was Adama has his special medallion that they figure out like fits into these locks and can like turn it. When it worked as a crystal, that was cool. That was your Well of Souls moment, right? It like hits there and shoots lasers. But before that, Serena's like, look, this indentation matches, and he like puts his crystal in and like turns something and something opens. But his crystal was just like diamond shaped. Like you just needed like a screwdriver would have turned that thing. It didn't have anything to do with
like
it being the crystal or like a And so
it wasn't magical.
That was something I thought they could have made a little cooler. Like, oh, there's this really weird shaped indentation here. Oh, my crystal happens to fit into that or whatever. The other thing was when they get back out, Starbuck shows up because the Cylons released him. Did you notice how far into the conversation it is before anyone asks Starbuck, like, how he got away or why he's back? They're like, oh, hey, Starbuck's here. And they're like hanging out and like talking about things.
All the
like,
women are like flirting
shouldn't
with
you be
him.
asking, where has he been? We thought you were dead. How did you did you escape the site? Like, nobody seems to care about that. They're like, oh yeah, Starbuck's back. Great. I don't know.
It seemed like they thought he was dead. So you'd think they'd be a little bit more. I did like that all the female pilots are reacting though and kind of all flirting with Starbuck. And then I'll tell you the other moment that I'm a complete sucker for that appeared in this episode. When Boomer, all of a sudden Boomer and all the pilots on the Battlestar are not sick anymore. Well, or they're okay at least. And Boomer walks up to Ty and he's like, Blue Squadron reporting for duty. And Ty's like, you can't even stand. And Boomer goes, Vipers are flown from the seated position. I thought that was, I'm a sucker for moments like that too. That sort of heroic, like, hey, I'm going to fight through this. I thought that was a really cool exchange. And I like both of those actors, the guy who's playing Ty and the guy who's playing Boomer. So I thought that that was a cool moment.
It's an attack on the surface of Cobalt.
And all of our warriors are down there.
Not all of them. Colonel, Blue Squadron reporting for duty, sir.
Lieutenant, obviously you can't even stand.
Viper is flown from the seated position, sir.
So Blue Squadron, the pilots are back. They fly in and save the day or fight off the Cylon attack. And then, of course, we see Baltar escaping, and he's like the most cliched of all cliched moments. He's like, he should have just been shaking his fist in the air because he's like, you haven't heard the last of Baltar.
I think he was shaking his fist in the air. Yeah,
he probably was.
The moment with Boomer and Ty, I'm 100% with you. I love that. That was a great line too about the Vipers are flown from the seated position. Yeah. I actually grabbed that as one of our little inserts to put. So audience, you may have already heard that, or you may hear it coming up somewhere in this episode. Because it was so good. It's such a great little scene. I feel bad poking fun at it. I will say what they needed was just one scene somewhere before that, where somebody in the med bay where all of them are says something about, oh, the Cylons are taking them all out. We don't have any pilots. And Boomer hears it and they know to get up. Because I'm like, how did they all suddenly, like, they were like dying on death's door.
Yeah, good point.
And somehow know to all get up and get dressed and report for duty because they're needed now. And I loved, like you said, the sort of sucking it up and being heroic there and coming back from the illness. I just really wanted there to be some setup to that so it could pay off. It was like the payoff without the setup.
There probably was a scene that they just didn't, that they had to cut for time.
That's in part 3.
Yeah.
Maybe the whole issue is this was like an 8-hour episode. And so that's why nothing makes sense, because they cut out 70% of the episode. My math is terrible. That would be like 90% of the episode.
So, Mark, obviously the big thing that happens at the end is kind of the last thing that I wanted to discuss. Do you have anything until we get to Serena?
No, we can talk about Serena. It seemed like it should have been the big thing. I was not very invested in the characters or their relationship, so it was not as emotional as perhaps it could have been.
All right, well.
You want to spoil it for anyone who didn't watch?
I actually was invested in this. First of all, so Serena, when they're escaping, gets shot by one of the Centurions. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they killed her off. And then they're back up in the Battlestar and she's laying in the med bay. I'm like, of course, they didn't kill her off. It's Jane Seymour and blah, 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 blah. And then
you forgot she's a guest star.
Well, I didn't even think about that. And then they do kill her off. And I actually was impressed because I had started typing out, I typed out at first, I can't believe they had the balls to kill off Serena. Then I'm like deleting it as she's like laying there in state on the Battlestar. And then I put it back, and kudos to them, because that is, like you said, a character that could be, I mean, she's marrying ostensibly the hero of this series. And I will say, maybe it's Jane Seymour and I love her. I actually was a little choked up during that scene when she was saying goodbye to her kid and saying goodbye to Apollo. I thought it was sweet. Maybe you're just a heartless monster.
That's entirely possible and probably true. No, I will say, as a parent myself, honestly, stuff where people have to say goodbye to their kids is often what gets me. That's something I am a sucker for.
And I hate Boxy.
I mean, even to the point of, a movie I teared up at? The end of Terminator 2. Where he's got to lower himself in, and he's not even the real parent. He's like the foster father to John Connor.
He's arguably not even a foster parent.
He's arguably a killer robot.
Not a human.
Right? But those kind of scenes have always gotten me since I was a kid, and definitely since I've had kids.
Edward Furlong was a bratty asshole too. You shouldn't have had any emotional reaction to that.
I know now why you cry, but it's something I can never do.
Oh,
come on,
God.
Man.
Okay.
Look, we've also had the conversation at some point that whatever just pushing your buttons James Cameron does, which he does you can watch his movies and you see and here's where he's going to pull your heartstrings and here's where he's going to throw in a joke to lessen.
Titanic got me.
But all of James Cameron's stuff does for me. And you can see him doing it. It's very structured. There's a reason behind the things and you see your emotions being manipulated, and whatever he does, it works on me.
If you
Anyway.
cried at Avatar, I am not going to be on this podcast anymore.
I did not. Avatar, honestly, is probably my least favorite James Cameron movie.
'Cause
I
it's
don't
bad.
understand why they're making 4 more sequels to it.
It's terrible.
Anywho, my point being, I don't think I'm always a heartless bastard, and usually saying goodbye to the kid gets me. And this scene, I think it was just like, look, Apollo overacts all the time.
Yeah,
I
true.
wasn't, like I said, invested in their relationship because we talked about like when they started dating, like, and he was proposing, like this seemed really fast. I thought
Yeah.
they had like one scene together.
I don't
And
like
we
the
haven't
kid.
seen them together long enough. I don't particularly like the kid. The sappy music was way overpowering,
Yeah.
like drowning out the I don't know. The scene just didn't work for me. And I felt bad for Apollo because like he loses the girl. He's stuck with the annoying kid. And I assume the even more annoying robot dog. And now he's like responsible for them. Oh, man.
Well, but there was some, like when she's like, the kid's crying because he's like, I don't want mom to go away. And she's like, that's no way for a hero to act, or like a war, whatever their pilot ranking is. That's no way for a soldier to act, or whatever she says to him. I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was sweet. And more so, I give kudos to the writers for actually killing off arguably their best actor.
That's totally fair. I would just say it might have also been, well, 2 things. One, the fact that she was listed as a guest star, like I noted during the opening credits, I was already thinking about, like, clearly she's going to get killed off. So it wasn't a surprise coming to me, but still credit to them for getting rid of a major character. Adam is probably their other, like, very strong actor, I would say.
Yeah.
Although he's a strong actor in, like, a different style, which is part
like
of it.
an older style.
Yeah, he acts differently, or the way he does his acting is different than the other younger characters. But no, let's give him some credit for that, like you said. I remember when 24 started and the first couple seasons, and then that kind of ran out of juice long before they stopped running the show.
Yes.
But the first couple seasons, one of the things I really appreciated about it was they were willing to kill off major characters by surprise. And honestly, you were always pretty sure they weren't going to kill off Kiefer Sutherland. But it's like the only show I've watched where it wouldn't have totally shocked me if the main character actually did die. Like it felt like there were real stakes that they would be willing to go that far. And that is pretty unusual. So you're right. Kudos to them for that. I think that same scene in a different movie where I was more invested in the characters or a different show might have worked. I think, like I said, I watched this a while ago, but I think also in the middle of that scene, NBC broke for like 4 minutes of commercials, which might have also affected my experience. The other thing I want to say, just because it's a movie that I really love and want to throw out a shout out for, but has a kid dealing with the loss of their mother and then being with the stepfather, is Love Actually, which is a fantastic movie. I would recommend that to everyone. And the kid in that is in The Queen's Gambit as one of the major characters, but like grown up, but still has like the very, very young face, like he's grown up, but like his face didn't change, which is interesting.
Like Peter Billingsley.
Yeah. Or
He'll always be Ralphie.
You mentioned Titanic. I saw just a clip of that the other day, and I forgot how young Leonardo DiCaprio looks in that.
I know.
Because he does seem like someone like who hasn't aged in a long time. Like I feel like for the last like 15 years, Leonardo DiCaprio has looked the
stayed
same,
the
and he still looks very young. But then you saw that, and like I forgot how young he was in
It was
that.
23 years ago.
That was when it came out. It was probably shot 25 years ago or more. It's 2021 now. What year did that was 97? Yeah, it's probably
97.
shot 25, 26 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, Mark. Do you have anything else on this one, or should we guess what next episode's going to be about?
Can I end this with the last thing that happens in the episode?
Sure.
Why the heck is there a one-line Adama voiceover at the very end, which has not happened in any of the other episodes? It's just, again, they're just like, they can't figure out what the style of their episodes are, and like, hey, what if Adama had like a voiceover at the end? Well, we didn't record anything. Just get him to say like one line or grab something from earlier and we'll throw it in as voice. Like, I don't know what they're doing.
I wish his one line would have just been like, so that's how that happened. And that's
I think it should have been, all this has happened before and all this will happen again.
That would have been good. Okay, Mark, are you ready to rate this episode?
Yes, I am.
I think you're going to be meaner to this episode than I am. And bear in mind, this is out of 5. And bear in mind, we're grading on a curve, a Battlestar Galactica curve.
You know, on the Battlestar Galactica curve, I know it's pretty negative on this, but there were actually a lot of things I liked and thought were more interesting in this than they've done in past episodes.
Yes.
Most of the things I was calling them out on were things where they had a good idea for a plot element or something there, and it was like they didn't tie the things together the way I wanted.
Yeah, my complaints with this episode is the parts that I straight up could not understand. However,
which in fairness, there were plenty of.
Yes. However, unlike most of the episodes before, I actually enjoyed the ride on this one quite a bit.
Yeah, I was intrigued at seeing what was going to happen, and they did have, you were more emotionally invested than I did, but they actually had some emotion and changes to the characters, and as you mentioned too, establishing more of who the characters are, particularly Starbuck.
And like you saying that James Cameron can pull at your heartstrings, Donald Belisario, considering I love Quantum Leap, obviously knows where my buttons are because he hit kind of all of them.
There you go. So on a scale of Avatar to Quantum Leap, I will give this I'm going to say 3.5.
Okay. All right. So we're not far apart because I would say a 4. I would say a 4 on this one because this is by far the most. This is one where I wasn't checking on how far the scan bar had gone every few minutes because, like, I did check a couple times just to make sure NBC wasn't freezing up on me. But this actually was an enjoyable ride. It had, Raiders of the Lost Ark is my favorite movie. It literally lifted the Well of the Souls out of it, and the Star Wars are some of my other favorite movies, obviously. So it had a lot of stuff from my childhood that I liked. And if I were a kid watching this episode would have blown my eyebrows off.
That's fair. I mentioned the MacGyver episode. I loved to watch MacGyver as a kid, and I saw an episode more recently, and it's not as good as I remembered it. And it's probably just objectively not good.
Yeah, it's quite bad, I think, if I recall correctly.
So, yeah, if I was a kid, I would have loved this, and I would have not cared about most of the things that bothered me. I do think the things I was confused about as an adult, I would have been more confused about as a kid. So,
True.
Yeah,
would you have known you were confused, though?
I think so. I knew when I was a kid when things didn't make sense.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't know. I think I did.
All right.
Maybe. Transformers always had a pretty straightforward plot. That's what I was watching when I was a kid.
Am I confusing you right now by asking this question?
What are you talking about, Mike? My brain can't handle it. I'd be okay with a 4. I was debating 3.5 and 4, and I think one of the things that bothered me about this, which maybe should lean towards it being a 4, is the missed opportunities. Like, to some degree, it's less disappointing when everything's just bad than it is when you see they had the pieces there for it to work and couldn't put them together right.
Agreed. And Mark, I will say too, this does make last week's episode slightly better to me because they did pay off a lot of this stuff. I wouldn't go back and rate that any better because it was boring.
Right.
But they did, at least taken as a whole, pay off a lot from that first episode, from the first part of this episode.
Totally agree. Really good point. And I think that goes back to the question of if this was like, and I think we did try to cut the first 3 episodes some slack. Like, okay, this was originally aired as, I agree, it makes last week's episode retroactively better because they did pay off a lot of that stuff. But now that they're at the point where these were aired as single episodes and you have to wait a week to find out what happens, I also don't think it's unfair to say, hey, you got to have a little setup and payoff per episode. You can't just set up stuff and say, hey, keep watching and several weeks later, this will all make sense.
Yeah, and you also can't end the first part of it on a non-cliffhanger where they're just like, well, bye. It's like, okay.
Fair.
Okay, Mark, next week's teaser. You ready for it?
Yeah, what is it?
Okay, this is our first one that is not like a multi-part movie, basically, that we have to watch.
All right, like an actual standalone 1-part episode.
We hope so, but it is still also 1 hour long, so I don't know how standalone it's going to be, but it is called The Lost Warrior. I have not cheated.
It would have been very convenient if that was someone they found on the lost planet of the gods.
Well, I'm thinking you could have probably called part 2 of this one The Lost Warrior. I'm guessing something is going to happen again where either Starbuck or it's probably going to be Apollo. Apollo is going to he's going to vanish somehow, not unlike in the reboot when Starbuck vanished. Mm-hmm. Apollo is going to vanish. The kid's going to be distraught. Starbuck's going to go on some heroic mission to save him. That's my guess.
That's a really good guess. I literally can't come up with anything better. I think that's the best guess you can make, but I'll make a different guess just so we have something else to talk about, and I will probably be wrong. I'm going to say, since it's the Lost Warrior, that somebody from their like legends and past who was like long dead or whatever, they find or comes back.
Ooh, good one.
And points them towards something.
And he's dressed like either a cowboy, a Roman, or...
I really want there to be an Old West episode. Did Derek say there was one?
I think there's going to be one. I think you're definitely right about that.
That's what we should be guessing, is which backlot set are they going to use for the next one? So, Mike, I'm curious, have you heard any news about the new Battlestar reboot? Because this ties into what we were just talking about how you wrap things up within an episode or the multi-parters. I had something come across my news feed this week about the new reboot that I thought was really interesting about their release strategy. Have you heard about this?
Is this what I tweeted out on Deja Review?
Probably.
Yes.
But that's not where I saw it. Yeah. I saw it on my Google feed.
Yeah, I saw it on my Google feed too. So we're obviously getting tracked. Yes.
I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. So they're doing, at least my understanding of it, unless you want to describe it, my understanding of it is that they're releasing in chunks when it makes sense to release in chunks. And otherwise they're going to basically be more like normal broadcast TV release schedule. But like, for example, just going back to the old Battlestar Galactica, they would have released all 3 of the first episodes all as one chunk. So you could binge watch those back to back to back. Like the last 2 that we just went through, there were 2 parters. They release them together. Is that kind of the impression
but then
you got?
It also sounded like even within like length of episodes, like, hey, if we have a big battle that takes place over 3 episodes, those might be 3 40-minute episodes, and we'll release those all at once. And then the next week's episode might be like a 30-minute single standalone episode sort of thing. I think that's really cool. And I think something that this could have benefited from, like, had I watched Lost Planet of the Gods Part 1 and 2 back to back, like if those came out at once and you kind of binged them, I mean, I know these were both available to us because they came out 40 years ago, but like you said, that would have made more sense than if I had to watch the first part and then wait a week for the second part. I don't know that would have been super satisfying.
It wouldn't have been, because there was no good cliffhanger. That you weren't really thinking, oh God, I got to see what happens next week, because there wasn't a good cliffhanger of the first one.
Right. But that's, to me, what makes this really interesting. And look, I am always for people trying new things in film and television and trying new ideas. And so I'm really excited that they're talking about this, and I hope they do it and see how it works, because it would be pretty different. Because most things right now seem to be either we're going to release 1 episode a week like a normal TV show used to, or we're going to shoot a whole season and release a whole season at once like a lot of the Netflix things do. And this is this kind of interesting in-between part. I do wonder if the potential problem for that is people watch the sort of chunk that makes sense and you don't have as much of a cliffhanger. Now, if you're invested in the characters and like, I care about these characters, I want to come back and see the next episode, great. And they very well could do that. But part of the way you get people coming back week after week is the fact that sometimes you are left in the middle of not knowing some big things and like, I got to come back next week to see how this resolves. So it's interesting to me. They're kind of betting on themselves that like our characters and storylines are going to be good enough that even after we complete a whole arc, you're still going to want to come back next week and see what the next one is. I think that's cool. Yeah,
I love that they're doing it. I've read a lot about doing podcasts and stuff like that. And with the Bureau Boys, my other podcast, sometimes we have, a 40-minute episode. Sometimes we have a 20-minute episode. I think, especially in the podcast medium, which is very similar, I feel like, to the making video for streaming medium, because you're making on-demand media for the most part. And I think you have to think in the back of your head, it's going to be as long as it should be. Like, it should take as long as it takes. And if you're creating something compelling and you need that time for, us always running long on these episodes, then you need it. Like, we had a long episode with Derek because Derek was saying super interesting things and we were getting a lot of great information for us. Sometimes some Bureau Boys episodes are 15 minutes long. If we ever have a Deja Reviewed episode 15 minutes long, I'll think that you had a stroke or something. But in this on-demand world that we live in this instant gratification, I mean, watching Breaking Bad, I didn't start till about season 3 or season 4. And so I was like, that was back in the disc days, I think, of Netflix. So I was like chewing through like 2 discs every couple of days until I caught up. And then when I got to season 3 or 4, caught up live, I was like, it is agony in between weeks and in between seasons. Better Call Saul, very similar. And even that was not as cliffhangery as Breaking Bad. I mean, really all they care about on their app is, are you pushing play on the next one? We don't care if you are coming back a week later. Are you consuming our content again so we can keep feeding you ads on the next one? I think this is a great strategy. I completely agree with you. I think the more flexible, because honestly, look at what they're doing at the NBC app. Look at what print media
I
has
tell you
been
what they're
doing.
not doing is having any of their programmers work on making it better.
Right. And think about print media. I feel like a lot of, as technology advances more and more and people, grandparents are using iPhones, advertisers and technology people have not reinvented what our watching habits are and what our viewing habits are and what people want and how you can still market at them. So anything that breaks out of that mold of, we're putting these commercials at this point and we're doing this thing and we're going to have an ad break in and you can skip the ad after 5 seconds. And I'm not saying that that's specifically connected to what I'm saying here, but anything that you are trying to shake it up and not just be like, hey, we're going to do 43 minutes because normally we had to do commercials. Why not? If I was writing for the new Battlestar Galactica, I'm like, hey, in the early 2000s, people would sit in front of their TV very, very happily for an hour with ads and watch all of it. So if I don't have to do ads in the traditional way because someone's paying to get rid of those ads, they're already paying, I have a full hour's worth of content. I can make these episodes a lot denser. I can get a lot more information. I can have those breaks in the action. I can do more character stuff. I can get a lot more out of an hour than I can out of 43 minutes that I have to cut down because there's commercial breaks. So I think it's great. I can't wait to see what they do with it. I hope it's good.
I'm really excited. Well, Sam Esmail's doing, I don't think he's EPing it, but he's kind of like helping him get it set up and stuff. Who did Mr. Robot, which I loved. So I'm excited to see him involved in what he wants to do. Yeah, you make a really good point about how things like podcasts and then the streaming economy, the whole on-demand, people need to be trying new things. So I hope this is successful. I can see a lot of potential where it can be, but I do also think it's a risk, like anytime you try something new. So I'm excited to see what they do.
Yeah.
I got to say, I know one of your all-time favorite shows is Lost. We were in the same boat on Lost as you were with Breaking Bad.
So was I for the first couple seasons of Lost, too.
That was back in the... Kids, you won't remember this, but there used to be these things called DVDs. And that was how Netflix started, was DVD by mail.
Yep.
And we were watching Lost. I think we had like 3 seasons to catch up on.
That's about DVD. Where I was, I think.
And we were like doing them through Netflix, but we were getting through them so fast that like literally the mail couldn't get there soon enough. So we'd be doing like, okay, we just watched season 1, disc 3. I'm going to mail that back and put the thing to Netflix to send us disc 5, which will be here in 48 hours. Meanwhile, I'm running down the street to Blockbuster to get disc 4 so we can watch that in the intervening. We're going back and forth between Blockbuster and Netflix because we like couldn't consume it fast enough. Yeah. And then caught up to the point where it's live and you're like, wait, I have to wait a week? This sucks. We're dealing with that right now. WandaVision, which I know a bunch of people are into. We're a very MCU heavy family. And so... we watched it and the kids have been like, we want to watch the next one. We're like, it's not until Friday. Like, why does it only come out once per week? Like, that's how TV used to be. Like, which is kind of cool I will say for that show, since I have no idea where they're going with it. It's still early on, but they're doing it like in the style of old sitcoms. And I kind of dig that they're releasing 1 episode per week, like old classic TV style. I dig it.
And one thing that gets lost with this new thing that maybe they have to figure out a way to turn this around or make this more of a social thing is the great thing about being caught up on Lost and Breaking Bad is you would talk about it with people for a week while you were waiting for the next episode. Like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. Oh my God, what's happening with the island? Oh my God, what's happening with Heisenberg? And you would have those water cooler discussions for a full week. Yeah. And we are definitely missing out on that. That's my one sad moment of the sort of binge watching streaming generation is that we lose a lot of that because people are 6 episodes ahead of you just based on they had more free time that week. So
right. I remember when I
lament that a
House
little bit.
of Cards season 2 came out, which you'll remember was like the first big Netflix original show.
Yeah.
And season 2 came out at like midnight, and like I woke up the next day and there were people talking about the whole season. I'm like, I can't stay up all night and watch the entire rest of the show. I'm sorry. I will say I was pleasantly surprised this week because of exactly what you said. On my Facebook feed, in between all the political rantings, there was a lot of people talking about WandaVision because everyone had just watched the first episode and like, what's going on? Or the first 2 episodes I think they released together. Got into some big discussions with people about like where it might be going and stuff. And it was like that water cooler feeler. And you know all those people are waiting for the next episode and then going to be back on Facebook. Okay, here's what we saw now. Here's what's happening. So I think there's still potential for that. But it's hard.
Yeah, and the problem with that, though, which is what got me on The Mandalorian, I was waiting for because I had like a free month of Disney with my Xbox subscription. Mm-hmm. So I was waiting until all of season 2 was out before I used it because I wanted to just binge watch The Mandalorian. And so without a scheduled, hey, after, 9 p.m. on Wednesdays, everyone that's wanted to watch Lost has watched Lost. And shame on them if they haven't watched it yet and aren't caught up. Versus when they release these binge things, it's like you said, what am I supposed to do? Stay up the night that it got released, right? And House of Cards season 2 got released, and just stay up through the entire night and watch the whole thing so nothing gets spoiled for me. That's kind of a bummer too.
Yeah, although I mean, I like clearly what Disney and the other companies want, but Disney seems to be the one who's executing this right now. Is they don't want you to wait till all of season 2 of Mandalorian's out, subscribe for a month, watch it. And that's why they want to keep having new things launching all the time. Because you can't say, I'll just wait till Disney has launched everything they're ever going to launch.
Right. That's why I got them.
And yeah, like, look, that's how they get more of your money. But I will also say, like, we've talked about rotating subscriptions. And I know some people who do that. And it's absolutely financially smart. I'm like, I don't have my act together for that. And honestly,
me neither.
When stuff comes out, we just want to watch it. This is where our entertainment goes. We have kids. We're not like going out and partying and spending lots of money. Our entertainment is streaming services, and we have subscriptions to several. And when something comes out on Disney that we want to watch, we're going to watch it. And if we have to wait till the next week for the next episode, we'll do it. If they get enough people in their ecosystem semi-permanently, then you can have something like that. And I think you saw bits of that with The Mandalorian, where there were people who were talking as each episode came out about what was happening.
It was hard to avoid.
Yeah. Well, the solution Disney would say is you need to subscribe to us year round.
100%, or just avoid social media, which is what I ended up doing.
Which is probably a better option.
Yeah, very much so. To that point, Kelsey, I was just talking to Kelsey about this because we got into like a real Survivor rabbit hole. And I was like, I haven't seen a bunch of these old seasons. Let's go back and watch some of these old seasons. And kind of the only place to get them is CBS All Access. And so I'm like, all right, let's just subscribe. There was like a 2-week trial. I'm like, we'll make it through as much as we can, and then we'll subscribe for a month or 2. And so we've just basically been power watching Survivor for quite some time. But Kelsey was watching, just as she was going to sleep the other night, watching Gilmore Girls on Netflix. And I walked in, I'm like, which I know I hate, I know you love, but I walked in, I'm like, I'm really glad you're watching this, because I was like, should we cancel Netflix for a month or 2 while we're subscribing to CBS All Access? And we only have Netflix. I mean, we have Amazon Prime, which we occasionally watch stuff from there too. And we have YouTube Premium, but that's more for the music. So, I mean, we really don't have that. We're not subscribing to Hulu. We're not doing Disney Plus. We've got the subscription, which you're reminding me I have to cancel. But we're not that big into any of that stuff. So, yeah, and also they found that price point. Like if it was $30 a month, I'd be like, yeah, we're definitely going to be rotating. They found the price point where it's like, it's only $15 a month or whatever, $10 or $15 a month. It's like, who cares?
Right.
So,
yeah.
All right. Should we move on?
Yes.
Thank you all for listening. This was Deja Reviewed. If you do want to watch along with us, you can use the NBC app or go to NBC.com to watch full episodes of Battlestar Galactica for free. We will be watching episode 6 on NBC.com, which is called The Lost Warrior, as we just mentioned. If you're enjoying Deja Reviewed, please leave us a rating and a comment wherever you're listening to us. Tell friends, tell family, tell enemies, tell people that you aren't related to. Anyone, if you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe. You can find us at DejaReview.com, where you can find all of our social media. You can send us a tweet, leave us a voicemail, a text message, and we hope to see you again next time.
Deja Review.
This is the, like, people watch the episode, are super confused and then listen to this to be like, okay, no, I'm not an idiot. Nobody knows what's going on.
Right. And I think that's, though, a
That's our
good
niche.
place for us to be. Yeah.